What if the galaxy chose your fate, but you refused to follow? Welcome aboard, traveler. You've just entered Beyond the Stars, where humans challenge empires, love rewrites ancient laws, and every heartbeat could change the universe. Today's story isn't just about surviving a distant world. It's about rewriting destiny, defying rituals, and discovering a bond stronger than blood. So lean in, turn up the volume, and let yourself fall into a world where one human stands against an empire, and maybe find something worth fighting for. This is The Star-Bonded Prisoner, and it starts now. Chapter 1, The Outsider in the Crucible. From the perspective of General Axa, they say the Crucible takes what it wants. Warriors, legends, blood. It does not return the same. For 500 years, no one emerged from its stone belly alive. Those who entered seeking glory found only madness and dust. And yet today, the impossible had happened. I stood atop the basalt ridge of Sarath's Watch, the wind tugging at the crimson crests on my armor. The twin sons of Val'Dran carved shadows across the sacred plateau below. There, the great mouth of the crucible, jagged and ancient, had opened, and out he came. A lone figure stumbled into the light. Dust clung to his dark flight suit, torn in half a dozen places, one eye swollen shut, knees barely holding. But he walked, upright, breathing, alive. "The human?" I asked, arms crossed tight over my chest. The priest beside me nodded. "Zane Callen, pilot, Earthborn. His ship fell into the sand spine dunes. The Crucible drew him in 3 nights ago." "Drew him in?" I repeated with cold disdain. "It's not a cave with a will. The Crucible chose him, General." I snorted. The priest flinched. Down below, the crowds began to stir. Nobles, highborns, and war college elites whispered with restrained horror and awe. Even from here, I could hear the words, chosen, star-bonded, unity. I hated them all in that moment. This human, this outsider, had done what no Val'Drani could. Survive the trial meant only for bloodline heirs. Now they dared to claim he was the K-Ok Thongyat, the unifying bond, an instrument of peace, a political leash, a knife in ceremonial gold. "The stars have spoken," intoned the High Seer Karshal, his voice echoing from the stone spires. "The Crucible has judged this soul worthy. He shall be the vessel of unity between the 3 bloodlines." My fingers twitched on the hilt of my sword. Kael, my brother, had died 5 cycles ago, slain in the last border war with the Mistborn tribes. A life taken in the name of these very bloodlines that now sought peace through marriage, peace through a human puppet. I stepped forward, voice steady and sharp. "And if the stars are wrong?" Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Even Karshal paused, his withered hand tight on the staff of moons. "This man is no Val'Drani," I said. "He carries no blood right, no knowledge of our pain, no duty to our people. And yet you ask us to bind ourselves to him? To tie our sovereignty to an accident?" Zane looked up at me then. Even from across the sanctum steps, I could see the fire in his eyes. Bruised, bleeding, but not broken. He did not bow. "Why did you enter the Crucible?" I asked, cold and loud enough for the assembly to hear. He coughed once, then spoke, hoarse but clear. "Didn't exactly choose to. My pod crash-landed. Your death cave was just the nearest shelter. I didn't know it was sacred." Murmurs swelled. "You survived," I said flatly. "No ordinary being survives the Crucible by accident." "I didn't survive it by being ordinary," he muttered. A flicker of something stirred in my chest. Not admiration, not yet, but recognition. The kind a hunter feels when meeting another creature that refuses to die. Karshal raised his hands. "By right of the Crucible, we must now begin the binding ceremonies. General Axa, Healer Lure, Witch Salreth, each shall be bound to the chosen by starlight in oath." I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on me, the crown of the Sunborn, the burden of leadership. And now what? A wedding? Not to a warrior, not to an equal, but to this half-dead, star-gazed man? "No. I do not consent," I said. Karshal's eyes narrowed. "You challenge the right?" "I question its wisdom," I said, stepping closer to Zane. "And I question his." Zane looked at me. No fear, no reverence. "Good," he said, voice like gravel. "Because I sure as hell didn't ask for this as either." A long silence stretched between us. I should have had him detained, should have demanded the right be annulled, but instead I said nothing. Instead, I wondered how a man like him had not only survived the Crucible, but still had the strength to argue with a Val'Dran warlord. The Crucible may not be sentient, but it never gives back what it doesn't want to keep. And perhaps, for reasons I did not yet understand, Val'Dran wasn't done with Zane Callen. Chapter 2, The Chains of Ceremony. From the perspective of General Axa, the Hall of Echoes shimmered under starlight. The ancient crystals embedded in the dome pulsed in time with the planetary rhythm, like a giant heart keeping score. I'd stood in this hall 1,000 times before battle, before judgment, before mourning. But never like this. Never to witness a binding ceremony I did not choose. He knelt in the center of the dais, wrists clasped together with bands of radiant blue. Not chains exactly, more like conduits of ancestral energy, laced with intent and law. The bonds of Val'Dran, the most sacred ritual tether in our culture. They pulsed against his skin, trying to read him, trying to accept him. He looked straight ahead, jaw set tight. He didn't bow, he didn't beg, but he didn't rise either. That at least showed he understood some form of respect, or maybe just defiance, refined into stillness. Around us, nobles whispered from their elevated platforms. Priests chanted beneath their breath, and my co-bonded, Luray and Salreth, watched in silence. I barely heard the High Seer's intonation. By the will of the Crucible and the judgment of the three bloodlines, this man shall be bound in spirit to the warlords of Val'Dran. Through unity, we mend what was fractured. Through oath, we preserve peace. Peace, the word stung worse than steel. I could almost hear Kael's voice in the back of my mind. Peace never lasts. It only waits to be broken. And now they expected me to kneel beside this outsider, as if a ritual could stitch together bloodlines soaked in history and grief. The seer turned to me. General Axa of the Sunborn, do you accept the bond? Every eye fell on me. I said nothing. He repeated, voice firmer this time. Do you? I will speak when I choose, I said coldly. A pause, a murmur of tension. I walked slowly down the marble steps, letting my boots echo through the chamber, the way a predator might circle an unknown threat. Zane watched me approach. Sweat shimmered at his brow. His breathing was shallow, but his gaze never wavered. Why do you resist this? I asked, loud enough for the room to hear. His lips tightened. Because I'm not your symbol. I didn't ask for this. I didn't fight in your wars. And I won't be used to clean up their mess. I almost smiled. He had no idea how much I agreed. You think we want this either? I asked. I think your people do, he shot back. But not you. You look like you'd rather kill me than bond with me. Now I did smile. Slightly. At least your eyes function, I said, folding my arms. He exhaled hard, half laughing in disbelief. So what now? You put on the rings? Swear some blood oath? Pretend we're in love? The last word dripped with sarcasm. I stepped closer, kneeling down to meet him at eye level. You're not wrong, Zane Callen. This ceremony is a farce. But Val'Dran is ruled by tradition, not desire. And whether you or I like it, this moment decides whether three nations burn or survive. He blinked. Then maybe the system is broken. I stared at him for a long moment. No fear, no reverence, just fire. A fire I had not seen since... General Axa, the seer interrupted. We must proceed. I stood. No, I said, Gasps erupted. The seer stumbled back. Salreth's laugh echoed like silver bells from the shadows. I will not force this bond, I continued. Not today, not like this. The seer recovered his voice. You dare defy the right? I don't defy it, I said. I demand that it means something. If the Crucible truly chose him, let it be more than survival. Let it be earned. I turned to Zane. You want out of this? Prove why we shouldn't bind you. Show us who you are. Not in chains, not on your knees, but standing. He stared at me searching, then slowly, defiantly he stood. The energy cuffs deactivated with a flicker of light. The chamber filled with stunned silence. I'll prove it, he said, but not to your traditions, to you. I nodded once. Let the court see what I saw. A man who survived the impossible, who questioned fate itself and still dared to challenge me. The Crucible had released him, but Val'Dran hadn't accepted him yet, and neither had I. Not yet. Chapter 3. Beneath the Armor, from the perspective of General Axa, tradition dictated the next step. The right of concord, a private audience between each warlord and the would-be bond, as if proximity could forge understanding, as if sitting across from someone you despised could stitch peace into your blood. I never believed in that nonsense. But the right was law, and Val'Dran does not bend for belief. I chose the Hall of Flame for our meeting. No priests, no witnesses. Just the glow of the molten pillars and the scent of scorched iron in the air. The perfect place to test a man's resolve. He arrived late. Zane entered wearing a loose tunic provided by the acolytes, the bandages on his arms still fresh from the healer's touch. He walked with the gait of a soldier, even if his posture suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. I stood at the far end of the chamber, flanked by statues of my ancestors, generals who died with their swords raised, not their hands clasped in peace. He eyed the room, then me. Subtle choice for a bonding session. Fire reveals character, I replied. He arched an eyebrow, and here I was, hoping for tea. I ignored the sarcasm and gestured to the stone bench across from me. He sat slowly, clearly favoring one leg. But he didn't flinch when the heat from the pillars licked the air between us. You've made quite the impression, I said. Even Salreth was intrigued. That's rare. She considers most men insects. He exhaled through his nose. Not looking to impress your trio of warrior priestess queens, if that's what you're implying. Then why are you still here? That gave him pause. He didn't look away. Because I don't run. Not until I understand the battlefield. Is that what you think this is? I asked. A battlefield? You, a throne forged from Sunfire? 3 different factions are trying to force a marriage for political convenience? He shrugged. Feels familiar. I let a sliver of a smile curl one side of my mouth. Then you know this doesn't end with ceremonies and oaths. It ends with blood, or something that costs even more. He studied me then, truly looked. You lost someone, he said. My fingers twitched before I caught myself. You assume too much. I see it in your eyes, he said, voice lower now. The way you carry your shoulders. The way you hate this ceremony more than I do. You've buried someone important because of these traditions. I stood sharply. You presume to know me because you survived a maze you barely understood. You think a few scratches and a defiant stare make you worthy of standing in this hall. He didn't back down. No, but I know what grief looks like. And I know what it means to be used as a symbol when all you want is to be left alone. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was something else. Heavy, raw, almost familiar. I turned away, facing the molten columns, letting the heat sting my face. His words had landed more than I wanted to admit. My brother, I said quietly. KL. He died 5 cycles ago in the War of the Crimson Divide. He believed in unity, in the old rituals. He volunteered for the first blood binding with the Mistborn tribes. I turned back to Zane. They sent his body back in a flame cradle, spine shattered, chest carved open as a warning. Zane said nothing. And that silence finally was the correct response. After that, I continued, they still demanded unity, peace by any means, even if it meant binding me to a stranger. I narrowed my eyes. To you. He met my gaze. And yet, you spared me in that hall. You gave me a choice. You weren't ready, I said, but I don't think I was either. He stood slowly, stepping closer, not out of defiance now, but understanding. I didn't ask to be here, Axa, he said, but I'm not your enemy. For the first time since his arrival, he said my name without bitterness. No title, no armor between us. I stepped closer too, until the air between us shimmered from heat, and something else neither of us named. Then prove it, I whispered. He tilted his head. How? I drew my blade, not to threaten, but to offer. Tomorrow, I said, you'll train with me in the arena, not to fight, to listen, to move like one of us. If you wish to earn the right to stand beside me, you must first survive under my command. He took the blade in his hand. It pulsed briefly with sunfire, recognizing his touch, not rejecting it, not yet. Chapter 4. The Heat of Discipline. From the perspective of General Axa, The arena was empty at dawn, save for the roar of fire vents beneath the obsidian floor. Val'Dran's day began not with songs or rituals, but with combat, and so did mine. I stood at the center of the Sunforge grounds, the twin moons fading behind me as golden light spilled over the black walls. My armor was stripped to its core, sleeveless, flexible, exposing the sun-marked tattoos etched across my back and shoulders. Each one told a story of conquest, sacrifice, survival. I carried no crown today, only discipline. He arrived late. Again. Zane walked in, dressed in the gray trainee gear of a new blood. No armor, just heat-weave cloth, a training blade strapped to his back, sweat already dotting his forehead. He looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes held fire. That, at least, was consistent. "Still alive, I called. He gave a tired smirk. "Disappointed?" "Not yet." I tossed him a shield. He caught it clumsily, nearly dropping it. "We'll begin with reflex drills," I said. "You don't need to win. You just need to survive." "Story of my life," he muttered. I attacked without warning. A clean arc of my blade swept toward his ribs, fast and low. He barely managed to block, stumbling back 2 steps. His breath hitched, but he stayed upright. "Good," I said. "Now stop thinking." I pressed harder. Feints, sweeps, elbow strikes. He struggled, adapting slowly, relying on instinct more than technique. But what he lacked in skill, he made up for with raw reaction. He wasn't graceful, but he moved, like someone used to danger, to chaos. "You've trained," I said between clashes. "Military survival school," he replied. "I'm better in zero gravity." "Gravity doesn't care if you bleed," I snapped, slamming his shield aside. He hit the floor hard, rolled, and came back up swinging. Sloppy, reckless, but brave. I disarmed him with a quick twist of the wrist. His blade skittered across the floor. He stared at me, panting. "You fight like a Terran," I said. "Guilty." I stepped closer. "You rely on emotion, anger, panic. That will get you killed here." "Maybe, but it also got me through the crucible." That halted me, only for a breath. I lowered my weapon. "What did you see in there?" He looked away. "You wouldn't believe me." "Try me." He was quiet for a long moment, eyes fixed on the horizon. Memories that weren't mine. Voices in languages I didn't understand. A version of me that gave up, died, then another that didn't. I don't know what was real. I only know it changed me. The crucible didn't just test the body, it fractured the soul. And if it showed him what could have been, then perhaps... "You lasted longer than most," I said. He met my eyes. "So what now? Did I pass your test?" I circled him slowly. "You're not ready?" "Of course not." "But," I added, "you're willing, and that matters more." He blinked. That almost sounded like a compliment. "Don't get used to it." He grinned through the sweat, and for a second something softened between us. Not warmth, not yet, but the start of recognition, the way 2 predators acknowledge each other, not as prey, but as possible equals. Before I could speak again, a faint chime echoed from my comband. I tapped it, and Commander Vessa's voice crackled through. "General, security breach in the inner court, minor explosion. No casualties, but someone breached the outer ward." Zane raised an eyebrow. "Friendly neighbors?" I narrowed my gaze. Not even close. I turned back to him. "Training's over for now." He handed me the shield. "I passed something, right?" I didn't answer, but I let him walk beside me instead of behind. The outer ward was scorched in 2 places, blackened marks along the sandstone walls. Energy residue crackled faintly in the air. The blast had been contained by our runes, but the message was clear. A threat, a warning, and likely a test. Commander Vessa met me at the gate, armor crisp, her expression grim. "The assailant used phase tech, Terran. Our sensors registered no identity imprint." I glanced at Zane, his jaw clenched. "Wasn't me." "I know," I said. "If it had been, they wouldn't have missed." Vessa continued. "No survivors, but the assailant left a data tag, symbol of the Shrouded Fangs. That froze the air. The Shrouded Fangs were assassins, traitors to Val'Dran, loyal to no bloodline, hired blades for anyone who wanted the old ways broken. Someone didn't want Zane alive. "They moved too early, I said. Or they think the bond is already forming, Vesa replied. I turned to Zane. Stay within guarded quarters. No more wandering. No more heroics. He opened his mouth to protest. I stepped in close. This isn't a sparring arena anymore. Someone just declared war on you. That makes you our weak point, or our fuse. He swallowed hard, then nodded. As I turned away, I felt his eyes on my back, watching, measuring. Good. Let him see the weight I carry. Let him feel what it's like to be hunted, not just by enemies, but by expectations. Tomorrow, the rite of insight would begin, a ceremony where each bond was tested for emotional resonance. And if Zane survived that, then perhaps Val'Dran had truly changed. Chapter 5, The Mirror of the Mind, from the perspective of General Axa. No amount of training could prepare you for the rite of insight. Steel sharpens muscle, war hardens will. But this ritual, it strips away everything. Armor, titles, pride, and lays the soul bare before another. I hated it, not because it was dangerous, but because it was honest. The ceremony took place in the chamber of echoed breath, a crystalline dome veiled in mist and silent energy. The only light came from the heartfire flame, a floating ember that flickered in response to emotion. I stood at the perimeter with Salreth beside me, arms folded, robes dark as the void, her expression unreadable as always. Lorray stood at the center, robed in flowing silver. Her eyes were closed, hands gently raised. Around her, floating runes spun in rhythmic orbit. In front of her sat Zane, seated cross-legged, palms resting on his knees. He looked calm, but I knew the signs. Jaw tight, fingers twitching slightly, a bead of sweat crawling down his temple. You're certain this is wise? I muttered to Salreth. She smirked. It's either wisdom or recklessness. The difference is usually the result. I watched as Lorray began the chant. Her voice was a soft hum at first, an ancient language no longer spoken outside ritual. The runes brightened, the mist thickened, Zane inhaled, and then everything went still. What happened next was not visible to the eye, but I'd been through the rite once before. I knew what he was seeing. The tapestry of self, they called it, a construct of memory, emotion, fear, and truth. The one being judged walks its path, and the empath, Lorray, walks beside him, not as an intruder, but as a mirror. He would not be able to hide, not from her, not from himself. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The heartfire pulsed violently, its flame flaring with bursts of red, gold, and white. Emotions, rage, sorrow, longing. At one point, the light dimmed almost to black. Salreth frowned. That's not normal. Something's resisting, I said quietly. Not him, she replied, eyes narrowing. Her. I stepped forward. Lorray? No response. Her lips were still moving, but her body trembled. I moved fast. Before anyone could react, I crossed the chamber and placed a hand on Zane's shoulder. The energy leapt like lightning. I felt it pull, not physically, but mentally, emotionally. A psychic vortex yanking at my awareness. I saw flashes, a burning cockpit, a voice screaming in static, Zane, eject, do it now. A child hiding beneath a metal bench as explosions rained outside glass walls. And then, a battlefield. Bodies. A choice. Kill a man to survive, or let a friend die. I staggered back, breath ragged. That wasn't a tapestry. It was a storm. Zane gasped and fell backward, chest rising and falling like he'd run for miles. Lorray collapsed to her knees, pale and shaking. I caught her before she hit the floor. What did you see? I asked. She gripped my arm like a lifeline. Her eyes locked onto mine, not scared, but changed. He doesn't just carry pain, she whispered. He carries layers of it, walls built on walls. And yet, underneath, there's no rot. I blinked. What? He's broken, she said, but not corrupted, not twisted. He's been forged by loss, but he hasn't let it hollow him. She looked toward Zane, who now sat up, wiping blood from his nose. I tried to reach his center, Lorray said, and he pulled me into his instead. Salreth stepped forward, arms loose at her sides, eyes narrowed in intrigue. That's never happened before. Zane pushed himself up to standing. His gaze found mine immediately. Didn't realize that came with blood loss. I stepped toward him. I wanted to scold him for being reckless, for nearly collapsing a sacred rite, but all I said was, "You passed." He blinked. "That's it? No applause? No ceremonial badge? You didn't die. That's reward enough." He gave a half laugh and nearly swayed. I caught his arm without thinking. He tensed. I didn't let go. "You should rest," I said. "You too," he muttered. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I had. But it wasn't his ghost. It was mine. Later that night, I stood alone on the balcony of the Sunspire, the tallest tower in the capital. The stars above Val'Dran glimmered like ice crystals, silent, watching. Zane's memories still echoed in my head. Not the details, the rite shielded those from observers, but the feel of them, the despair, the willpower, and something else I hadn't expected, a stubborn hope. He didn't believe in destiny, or unity, or Val'Dran, but he still fought, still tried. Even when every reason not to was handed to him. The wind shifted behind me. I didn't turn. "I know that step, Salrith." She joined me at the edge, her silver robes catching starlight. "So," she said, "do you still believe he's not fit for the rite?" I was quiet. Then, "I believe he's not ready for politics, or ceremony, or being a symbol." She tilted her head. "And yet," I clenched the railing, "and yet he might be the only one here who remembers how to feel honestly." She smiled. "You're starting to like him." "No," I said flatly, but my voice wasn't convincing. Even to me, Chapter 6. A thread in the flame from the perspective of General Axa magic was never mine. I knew blades. I knew battle formations, how to break a line and how to break a man. I understood the heat of the forge and the silence before the kill. But the arcane, the unseen threads that shape reality beneath our feet, that belonged to Salrith, and today it belonged to Zane. The trial of resonance was held beneath the Temple of Stars in the Chamber of Ley, a circular sanctum carved into the mountain's core, where the lifeblood of Val'Dran's ley line pulsed in radiant veins through the black stone floor. The energy here was older than our people, raw, sentient, alive. Only those the ley recognized could survive communion. I stood beside Salrith on the observation platform above the chamber, watching as Zane stepped into the ley circle. The chamber lights dimmed as arcane runes lit up along the walls one by one, responding to his presence. He moved cautiously, eyes narrowed, hands half raised like he expected the ground to vanish beneath him. Salrith tilted her head. His aura resists classification. I glanced at her. Meaning? Meaning he's not blank, not dormant, but not attuned either. Like he doesn't come from any strand the ley recognizes. Because he doesn't, I said. He's Terran. She shook her head slowly. Even off-worlders leave an echo. His? It's like his soul is threaded differently. The ley line pulsed beneath Zane's boots. The runes shimmered violet. Salrith stepped forward and raised both hands. "Zane Callen, do you consent to enter the arcane trial, knowing it may end you?" Zane exhaled. "Not the worst first date I've had." I resisted the urge to roll my eyes, so did Salrith. Barely. Then she lowered her arms and the ley line reached up. Light exploded. It wasn't heat, not exactly. It was memory. Time, weight. The sense of the planet's breath rushing through you, not into your lungs, but into your bones, into your blood. Zane screamed. The energy lashed into him, threads of blue and gold wrapping around his limbs, pulling at his chest like hands trying to open him from the inside out. But he didn't collapse. He stayed standing, shaking, eyes clenched, face pale. Salrith's expression shifted, just slightly. "Fascinating," she whispered. "It's not rejecting him." The ley line began to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. For the briefest moment, a ripple of energy rose through the chamber and struck the ceiling, triggering a pattern of ancient glyphs none of us had seen lit in centuries. "What the hell is that?" I asked. Salrith's voice was nearly reverent. "That's old. Pre-Empire. Before the bloodlines." The lights dimmed, the threads unwrapped from Zane's body, and the chamber fell silent. He staggered backward and fell to one knee, gasping. But he was alive, and the ley had touched him. Salrith descended the stairs slowly, her expression unreadable. She reached him, crouched beside him, and placed 2 fingers to his temple. A pause, then she looked up at me. It accepted him. I clenched the railing above. No outsider has ever— I know, she cut in, but the lay doesn't care about tradition. It only responds to resonance. Then he's in, I said quietly. Salreth nodded. More than that. I think he may be something the lay has waited for. I didn't like that, not because I doubted him, but because I feared what the lay wanted in return. I found him alone an hour later, sitting at the edge of the outer wall, feet dangling over the citadel cliffs. The air was cool, quiet, still. He didn't look up when I approached. You're not supposed to be out here, I said. No one stopped me. I will, if I have to. He gave a small smile. Thought you might. I sat beside him, not looking at him. You survived. Again. Starting to get suspicious. I let the silence stretch between us. The stars above shimmered, uncaring. Finally, I said, what did it feel like? He thought for a long time, then, like being unraveled. Like everything I've ever hidden was suddenly part of the air around me. But it wasn't cruel, it was curious. Like the world was asking, what are you really? And for once, I didn't have an answer. I nodded slowly. He turned to me. Do you? Do I what? Know who you are? I exhaled. A weapon, a legacy, a sister to a martyr, a general without a future. That's not an answer. It's the only one I trust. He looked at me for a long moment. That's not enough. I met his gaze, and then the wind shifted. I felt it first, an unnatural chill against the back of my neck. Then the whisper of metal. I moved on instinct, my blade unsheathed in a blur. A throwing needle, black as night, clanged against its edge and spiraled into the wall beside us. Zane dropped to a crouch. What the hell? I scanned the rooftops. Nothing, but my blood ran cold. That needle wasn't Val'Drani. It wasn't Terran either. It bore the mark of the shrouded fangs. They're here, I growled. Zane stood, eyes scanning the dark. You mean the assassins? I nodded, and they've just declared that this union is a threat. He looked at me, face suddenly serious. I'm starting to think they're right. Chapter 7. Blood in the Stars, from the perspective of General Oxa. The blade was silent. It sliced through the curtain of night like a whisper, silent, perfect, and meant to kill. I moved faster. My forearm caught the strike midair. Sparks burst as steel met armor plate. The assassin landed with feline grace, cloaked in phase cloth that rippled between shadow and form. No insignia, no name. Just the sigil burned into one shoulder, a fang curved around a star. Shrouded fangs. Zane stumbled backward behind me, breathing hard. Okay, that's close enough to count as hostile. No sudden movements, I ordered, eyes fixed on the assassin. Not planning to dance. The fang drew twin daggers and lunged again. I met the charge head-on, our blades clashing in a burst of light and sound. The assassin was fast, too fast for most guards. But I was born in flame and blood. I trained in war. I pushed her back with a crushing elbow, twisted, and sent her crashing into the wall. She rolled, rebounded, vanished into shadow. Damn, Zane stepped closer. Was she? She's not gone, just repositioning. I scanned the dark. The palace perimeter shimmered with false safety. But I knew the fangs didn't work alone. If one was here, others were close. We needed to move. Follow me, now, I snapped. Zane didn't argue. He kept low, matching my pace as I led him through the southern passage, one of the old maintenance tunnels built during the Dominion Wars. It hadn't been used in decades, but I remembered every corner. He followed without question. That, more than anything, told me how much had changed. We reached the hidden chamber beneath the citadel, an armory vault long since abandoned. The moment we stepped inside, I sealed the blast door behind us with a manual override. Stone and steel slid into place with a thunderous clang. Zane exhaled. I missed the days when people just insulted me to my face. You're still breathing, I said. That makes this a good day. He looked at me. They're really trying to kill me, not politically, not symbolically, literally. Yes. And you just saved my life again. Yes. He stepped forward, eyes searching mine. Why? I stared at him. I should have said duty, honor, preservation of the right, but none of those answers fit anymore. Because I didn't want to watch you die, I said. That stopped him cold, his jaw clenched. That's starting to sound like more than a professional courtesy. I stepped closer. What are you asking me, Zane? I'm asking if I matter to you, Axa, not Val'Dran, not the right, just you. You silence, the kind of silence that comes before a sword strike or a kiss. I didn't speak. I couldn't. But I didn't step back either. His eyes searched mine like they were looking for permission. Then the comm band on my wrist crackled. General Axa, breach detected in Quadrant 12. Multiple energy signatures, elite guard en route. I cursed softly. They're flanking. Zane straightened. Then we move. Where? He looked at me. You're the general. You tell me. Oh, for the first time since this ritual madness began, I didn't see him as the outsider. Not as a symbol, not as a burden. I saw him as a soldier beside me. We go up, I said. Old watchtower. No ley line access, no ceremonial interference, just walls and sight lines. He nodded. Lead the way. We fought our way through narrow passages and forgotten stairwells. Two more assassins appeared, one cloaked in flame, the other in frost steel. I took down one. Zane shot the other with a pulse blade he lifted from the vault. Clean, efficient, no hesitation. When we finally reached the watchtower, breathless and bloody, I sealed the final door and dropped to one knee beside him. His hands were shaking. This is insane, I nodded. This is Val'Dran. He leaned his head back against the stone wall. So much for unity through bonding. I laughed, just once, sharp and bitter. I never believed in unity, but I'm starting to believe in you. He turned to me slowly. Say that again. I won't. Why not? Because it's true, and because I didn't want to feel the weight of that truth. Not here, not now. He reached over, his hand brushing against mine. Tentative, not a demand, a question. I didn't pull away. The stars outside were rising. Fires burned in the distance. Alarms flared across the citadel, and assassins hunted in silence. But here, in this stolen moment, I allowed myself to feel something dangerous. Hope, Chapter 8. The bond we choose from the perspective of General Axa. The Grand Council chamber hadn't seen this much tension since the Crimson Divide. Even the air felt heavier, like the planet itself was bracing for fracture. The tri-thrones of sun, mist, and arcana loomed above the circular floor, surrounded by diplomats, warriors, empaths, and scholars. Most stared at Zane Callen like he was a virus threatening to rewrite their DNA. A few, watched him with something that looked a little like curiosity. I stood to his left, arms folded, fully armored again. Salreth and Lure stood to his right, the three of us forming silent wall. He was alone at the center, but I no longer saw him as alone. Speak, Terran, barked Counselor Voron, the elder from the Arcana seat. You were not summoned to change the right. You were summoned to complete it. Zane looked up at them, posture straight, voice calm. I'm not here to complete anything. I'm here to offer something better. I bit the inside of my cheek. He hadn't told us what he planned to say, only that he needed to speak. Go on, I said under my breath. Surprise us. He did. I reject the tri-bond as written, he said. Gasps rippled through the room like a thrown stone on still water. I reject forced unity. I reject symbolism without substance. Vren stood. You dare? Let him finish. I cut in. Silence fell again. Zane turned slowly, addressing the room. I've been tested, mentally, physically, spiritually. I've survived your crucible, your ley lines, your assassins. And in all that time, no one's ever asked what I believe in. He looked at each of us in turn, Salrith, Lure, then me. I believe in choice. My breath caught. Zane stepped forward. You want peace, real peace. Then don't bind people by ancient laws. Bind them by shared purpose. Give them a reason to stay, not a rule that traps them. Counselor Thale of the Mistborn leaned forward. You speak of rebellion. I speak of evolution, Zane said. Let the bond be something new, a pact not of bloodlines but of consent. Let each warlord choose freely. And let the bond activate only when all three accept it, not because they must, but because they want to. The room descended into chaos. Voices shouted, some in fury, others in confusion. I remained silent. So did Lorray. Only Salreth smiled. Well, she said softly, that's never been proposed. Voron turned to me, fury in his tone. General Axa, your silence suggests complicity. It suggests judgment, I said, stepping forward. I drew my blade, not to threaten, but as a gesture of truth, and laid it on the council table. My oath is to Val'Dran, I said, not to tradition for tradition's sake. If peace is to be more than a performance, it must evolve. Lurray stepped forward next. I felt his mind, his heart. He has no lies in him. If we cannot trust him, perhaps we have forgotten how to trust at all. Salrith followed, her tone amused but firm, and the ley line itself accepted him. Shall we argue with the planet next? Voron's face twisted. This is heresy. This, I said, is survival. Zane turned to us slowly. Then I propose this. Not a forced bond, but a shared vow. A fourth path. He drew a small device from his belt, a standard Terran recording unit, and activated it. My vow, he said clearly, is to each of you, as you are. Not because I must, but because I choose. The room was still. No blade, no blood, just words. And yet the ley line pulsed beneath our feet. The flame of the council brazier turned white for a heartbeat, then settled. A sign, a shift. Salreth whispered, it accepted the vow. Lorray bowed her head, and I stepped forward and placed my hand on Zane's shoulder. He looked up at me. I still don't trust fate, I said, but I'm beginning to trust you. He smiled, quiet, real. For now, I added, understood. That night, the stars burned brighter than usual. The rite had not ended, but something new had begun. And deep within the chambers of the shrouded fangs, word spread. The bond had not been broken, but rewritten. And that was more dangerous than they had feared. Chapter 9. The battle we chose from the perspective of General Axa. The air tasted of ash and ozone. Val'Dran's ceremonial sky, usually awash in soft starlight and aurora veils, was now blackened with smoke. The signal fires had been lit. That only meant one thing. Open rebellion. We stood in the central amphitheater, where the final stage of the Kayok Tudo, the free oath, was meant to be sealed. A ring of dignitaries surrounded the platform, murmuring, expectant. The runes were set, the vow already given, but Zane never showed. I knew something was wrong the moment the flame on the high tower sputtered. It was supposed to burn gold. Instead, it flickered blood red. I turned to Commander Vesa. Where is he? Last seen near the eastern archway, she said, then stiffened. Her hand went to her comband. Wait! An explosion shattered the air. The crowd screamed. I didn't wait for orders. Zane had been ambushed near the old star crypts, hollow ground where the first warlords had been buried. Tactical mistake. Limited exits, tight quarters, easy to trap. I found him bleeding beside the central pyre, half conscious, pinned behind a collapsed pillar. 3 assassins encircled him. Fangs, elite tier, moving with unnerving silence. I didn't shout. I attacked. Steel clanged against curved blades. Sparks flew. One fang lunged at my exposed flank. I dropped low, slashed upward, and felt bones split under my blade. Another came at me from the side, but was knocked back by a blast of light and cold. Lurray. She stepped from the mist, hands aglow, eyes fierce. You didn't think we'd let you have all the fun, she said. A second bolt of magic ripped through the second assassin, pinning him to the wall. His body crumpled. Then came the third, a larger one, phase-cloaked in whisper fast. He reached Zane before we could stop him, dagger raised, then froze mid-motion. A silver chain of arcane runes curled around his throat, suspending him mid-air like a marionette. Salrith descended from the ceiling dome, one hand raised, her smile razor-sharp. Touch what is mine again, she said sweetly, and I will show you what it means to scream across dimensions. She clenched her hand. The assassin turned to dust. Zane gasped and coughed, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his tunic, but he was alive. I dropped to my knees beside him, tore open a healing pack, and pressed it to his wound. He winced. Remind me, not to propose again. Not worth the guest list. I shook my head. Idiot. His hand caught mine. But you're idiot. I froze. Lorraine stood behind us now, and I didn't need empathy magic to feel her nod. The bond is real, Salreth's voice came from the shadows, and now the whole planet will see. Later that night, the true rite was held, not in silence but with fire, not in tradition but in truth. The three of us stood at Zane's side as the ley line pulsed beneath the ceremonial dais. This time there were no chains, no forced vows, only hands, joined freely, and a world watching as the impossible became chosen. The ley line lit the sky. The runes etched in the citadel walls shifted permanently, marking a new pattern, a fourth crest beside the three great houses. It was Zane's sigil, the star-bonded flame. I stepped forward to speak. Let history remember, I said, that this bond was not written in blood, but in freedom. That unity does not require obedience, but trust. And that no matter where you were born, you can choose where you belong. Zane turned to me. Even you? I looked into his eyes. Especially me. And then, because no one expected it, I kissed him. The amphitheater roared. Epilogue. Under the same stars, weeks later, the world had quieted. The threat of the fangs had been pushed back, though never fully gone. Council structures were being reformed. Warlord votes were cast, not by bloodlines alone, but by pact representation. A new age had begun, and in a quiet tower in the Sunspire, I stood watching the sky. Zane stepped beside me, now dressed in ceremonial black and gold, less a soldier, more a symbol now, but somehow still completely himself. They'll never stop testing us, he said. No, I agreed, but now they know what happens when they try. He glanced at me. We fight. We choose, I corrected. He took my hand, and that makes all the difference. Together we looked up at the stars, not as strangers, but as equals, as chosen. And beneath the fire of three suns and the silent watch of the ley line, the bond held, not by prophecy, but by us. In a galaxy ruled by fate and bloodlines, one choice rewrote destiny, and that's just one of many stories beyond the stars. Thank you for joining Beyond the Stars on this emotional journey, where love wasn't inherited but chosen, and survival wasn't enough without meaning. If this story made your heart race, your breath catch, or your imagination soar, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss another tale from the far reaches of the universe. And tell us in the comments, if you were in Zane's place, would you choose Axa, Salreth, or Luray? We read every word you write. Until our next voyage, keep your heart open, your mind ready, and your signal tuned to Beyond the Stars.